Okay, to be very honest, being a nurse in the government field and also being pansexual with a girlfriend, I recently moved in with her. We decided to have a staying relationship together, and I honestly feel there's a lot more that can be done in Singapore. And by our government, be it the society, there's a lot more that we can do. I guess the first stage of repelling was good. It's great, but I feel we have a long way to go. And for couples like us for mature couples like us, when we look into housing and marriage and future, it's a huge dollar sign for us. And it doesn't actually practically work out unless you make that money. So finance-wise, to understand that we are put in that stand where if you want to be what you are, you have to do it privately or you have to fork out that money, I don't think that stand is quite fair for everyone. So in that way, I feel the government can do more. We can have more options for housing, we can have more options for marriage. So I do respect the law, but it is a waiting game, I guess. I really think it's a waiting game. As for the Indian LGBTQ community, as a nurse, I have had lots of patients coming in and they present themselves with depression and whatnot, with their own distress. And this is a thought that's always been at the back of my head that, we can do more with housing and all. Many of them are living with their friends, they're renting out. So I guess we can maybe have an organization that actually gets them a house, or we can have a safe home or safe space for them to actually lodge a while for a few months until things settle down and be happy and live. So there's a lot of work that we can actually do. There's a lot of support we can give. I guess we have to be more aware of our surroundings. Speak up with your friends, check on them, and maybe hopefully there are more projects that will pop up in future.
What I've realized about some straight people around us, they have, what I appreciate is they try to get to know about what's going on without judging. So they ask us more and more questions. That's okay with us, so we can answer them. We can make them understand this better. Not like, there are some of them who were like, how are you going to get married, or how is there going to be a child, or things like, how will your family accept this is not right and all that lah. So they tell me to actually go for counselling to be better. So that kind of things is I think it's nonsense. So in that sense, people should educate themselves if they don't understand lah, or they can ask us, that's fine. So for the government, really housing is really very difficult. The rent is high, super high nowadays. So to even buy a property, we have to be 35. It's long way to go. Another 5 more years probably. So meanwhile, we need somewhere. If we want to live in together and all that. So people need to understand our struggle in that sense lah. So other than that, we really have a long way to go in acceptance, but it's getting better. I'm sure it's getting better.
So I think that more education could be provided. I mean, growing up in a local school, like there was never any conversation about LGBTQIA people, and I hope things are better now after the repealing of Section 377A. But even then, I don't have too much faith that we will be taught this in our sex ed or in our schools, or will be provided any kind of this information in our from our teachers, counselors, and all that. So my hope is that there are some organizations that would go out and reach more schools and teach younger kids about what it is to be LGBTQIA community, and sort out the confusion and the shame and the abnormality kids feel towards themselves when they're trying to come out and when they're trying to process their feelings about being a part of LGBTQIA community. And I mean, I think I resolved to like online searching and like YouTube videos and all that, but I hope that a kid like me doesn't have to do that in the future, and they could actually approach their teachers and their parents and the community around them for that kind of help. And I think another aspect of it is that it's just a societal acceptance of it. Like, I remember holding hands with a girl and walking on the streets, and everybody's just staring at it and feeling that kind of weirdness, and the kind of like the fact that I'm doing something wrong was just really, really disheartening. And I feel like the community as a whole, even if you are against LGBTQIA, I feel like you should keep your opinions to yourself and not express your disapproval right to our faces, especially when we've taken so much to try to come to terms with who we are. And as far as what a society can do is, we can have more support groups, we can have mental health specialists who are especially for South Asian LGBTQIA community, and people who reach out, and helplines and all of these kind of things that can help us sort out what we feel and the internal battles we go through in our day-to-day lives. What about you?
I guess for me, in terms of what like we could do better as society, is just, I mean, I agree completely. Like, like having like LGBTIQA plus matters in like sex ed, like understanding what, like what it means to be like a queer person in Singapore. Because I mean, I never had that growing up, and I feel like it took me a while before I finally like came to terms with like, who I am and being comfortable in my sexuality, or like even other matters such as like, I think something simple would be just like movie ratings, or like just show ratings in general. Like, I think the moment there's anything remotely LGBTQ in it is just immediately R21, when like the whole thing is just like PG-13, maybe NC-16 at most. But I feel like putting immediately at R21 just because it has LGBTQ content it just makes it like harder to access for younger people who really want to know more about their sexuality, and who wants to see representation of themselves in the media. So I feel like that's like some simple things that we can just like push as a society. But other than that, I think the pretty standard, like marriage rights, housing rights, like those are things that a lot of people in the LGBTQ community still worry about, especially if they want to have a future in Singapore. Like, I've had friends or people that I know who fled the country, got married there, and then they come back because they just want to be recognized as a legally married couple, even if it's not in their home country, unfortunately. They just want to go elsewhere. So I feel like that's a pretty standard thing, because we claim to be a progressive society, we are a first world nation, but yet how we think and how our mindset is still very backwards. It's not exactly the most progressive for a country that claims to be progressive, honestly.
Sorry, I understand.
And like, in terms of support, definitely like having like authority figures or counselors who are trained in LGBTIQ matters. Like, it doesn't just start with like counselors or psychiatrists. I think even school teachers need to be more aware of this, on how to handle like situations like this, especially if like a child were to come out to a teacher, and like how do they handle this kind of situation. Because I know most teachers or like authority figures, I think the first thing they just want to do is just tell the parents, but it might not even be safe for them in that situation. So it's just how to handle matters like this delicately, and not just straight, I tell your parents.
I've actually gone through something like this back in school. So when I remember being 15 years old and writing a poem about liking a woman, and so I mean, my teacher saw the poem. It was for I submitted the poem, and she immediately went and told the principal about it, and then she went and told the counselors about it. Like, it became a very big thing, and the worst thing is the students got to know as well. So suddenly, like, people were making fun of me on the hallways. They were calling me a lesbian, and they were like, someone even cropped a picture of me kissing a woman and then like circulated it across the school as well. So it was all because of a teacher's mistake of not being able to handle the sensitive situation properly. Like, I felt for the rest of the year, all my poems were about like nature and like something really trivial, because I couldn't really I could never write about what I really felt again. Like I had to shut down that part in school. Like, so that was something that was really painful for me. Like the ostracization from my classmates, and how, you know, suddenly people just like changed the way they looked at me. And even now, it's been 4-5 years since it happened, and every time I go on a reunion, it's like they're still asking me the same questions, like, oh, are you still a lesbian and all that, just because of one thing the teacher did. So I feel like all of it could have been prevented if she just came to me and spoke to me, and like, you know, sent me to a therapist or a counselor or something. Instead, she thought it would be something that she could mock me on. So I guess the teachers should be better equipped to handle this. And not only that, I feel like we lack any kind of media representation. I barely saw any South Asian actors or musicians or you know, comedians or anything that represented who I was. So I think media representation and casting people like this would really help me. And also casting gay people as gay people instead of like straight people acting as gay people is like something that's also a concern for me.
So I feel like all changes can start and should start at home. So I mean, as far as I know, I'm like the only queer kid in my family. I'm not really sure about my cousins, my relatives. I'm not very close to them also. So I just feel like it's my, not say duty, but I just feel this responsibility to like educate my parents little by little. It's like you know, like Tamil movies like Kanchana. Is it Kanchana? I think it's Kanchana. Is it Kanchana? I think it's Kanchana. The trans woman, yeah, the one with the movie, the horror movie. And then then I'll tell her about like, yeah, this friend that I have, yeah, she's also transgender, and what her life is like, how long have we been friends. I let her know my name. And so yeah, I just do small things, slip in small stuff to really just let her know like, hey, this also happens outside of movies. It's normal, like, you know, in life. Yeah, that's just me. I don't know. What about yourself?
I agree with you. It's a very complex and complicated question. I think where I'm thinking from is in Singapore, I think we do have a unique situation because most of us live with our parents until we're much older, because public housing is not available to people until a certain age. And I think that means that you actually have to live with your parents and live with your family. And it can create a tense environment, right? And I have heard from friends and people that I know that they sort of live double lives, right? They live one life at home and they live another life outside, right? They don't bring their queerness home and they leave it at the doorstep. So I can understand it can be a very invalidating experience for people having to deal with it until they reach, 35, right? The big number 35, where they can actually have housing of their own. So I think in this context, one thing that can be done more for South Asian queer families is actually for resources and education to be available to parents, like family members, for them to understand, for them to educate themselves on what queerness is and what that means for them as a parent of a queer child or a daughter or a son. And I think that that kind of resource would actually help create less of a tense environment at home, and it would not require the child to put themselves through a very invalidating experience. And I think that is one of the sort of biggest gap I see, at least in the Singapore context, right? Because in other countries, if things go bad, you have the option of renting, or you have the option of moving out of your family home. But in Singapore, with prices being really high, rental is just really not a logical, option for many people, right? And I think this is really one resource that would really help. And I just want to build off what you mentioned earlier about movies. And I think media representation, if we think about the generation of my parents, they do spend time with movies, they do watch television shows or news or whatever it is, they do consume media on YouTube and so on. I think if they had access to more of such media representation that portrays queer people as being part of a family, And I think that would go a long way in changing people's perception of what queerness is. I think that's something that I have in mind.
Right, and I think like with media as well, it goes like I have to say like the correct representation also matters, because I don't know, with my family, with my parents, I feel like their knowledge of what gay people are is from what they see on TV, from what they see from videos, and then that's it. Like it's so, with the wrong representation, it can be like they get misinformed line, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, these gay people are this.
Yeah.
So the correct representation really matters. That's just for me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, just like yesterday, I was just talking to my girlfriend, like I was just telling her, like I don't see why people, what do people actually think, queer people do, in like when they're at home, right? I actually do laundry. My girlfriend and I wash dishes. We make lunch. We go to Sheng Siong to buy groceries, and they are thinking to themselves, "Oh, we cannot allow two girls to walk to Sheng Siong to buy groceries. No, gay people should not exist. We should not allow two girls to like stay at home and meal prep for their week. No, we cannot allow that to happen." Like, what is it that they don't want queer people to do? What is it they're thinking we are doing? I'm making dishes, like I am cooking meals, I'm doing laundry, I'm doing like washing, I'm folding clothes, I'm buying groceries. I do every day. My queer life really is a very boring, mundane daily life. Super boring. I do what every other person does at my age, for a daily life, right? That's really what I do. I go to work, I come back home, and I do all of these things. So what is it really that people are against? I don't know what they're thinking.
I think it's just we're not humanized, if that makes sense. Like, they already see us in a certain light, so there's already this preconceived notion of negativity. So like they find problems with whatever small things we do, but it's like we do the same thing as you, but just more fabulous.
I 100% agree. Yeah, I think the humanization needs to come out somewhere. That like the humanity of queer people, like we actually do and need the same level of humanity as everyone else, because honestly we do and live the same types of lives as everyone else, and we have same needs.
Absolutely. I think, okay, let me just start with maybe like parents and kids. So like, if like, let's say your kid comes to you and your kid is like, because now we live in a more like open society, right? Like you see a lot more like queer people outside and stuff. So obviously like, the repeal of 377A and stuff, like parents would obviously know about the queer community, and we also have our Gen Zs and millennials becoming parents as well. But I think for those who are like kind of stuck with like, parents who are stuck in that generational curse kind of thing, where your parents are like super strict and stuff, like I think parents should really hear out their kids and, be open and have that conversation with them. Like if your kid comes up to you and it's like, hey, I'm feeling these things and stuff, like no matter how young as well, because like, when I was going for like hormone therapy and stuff, my therapist told me that their youngest kid was 6 years old who came in for therapy and stuff. So no matter what age your kid is at, like make sure to really like hear your kids out, have a civil conversation, like don't bring like sensitive things like religion or stuff into it. Like just hear your kid as a human being and what their needs are, because as a parent it is your duty to love your kid and provide for your kid as well, and I think for like maybe just society in general, just like be understanding and be open, like just be open to people who like look differently, like we are all just like human beings just like you. We all also want to have a family, we all also want to have a proper job and stuff. Like our sexuality and our orientation or who we express ourselves as shouldn't like come in the way of your basic necessities like work, life, etc. So and don't be afraid to ask questions in a respectful manner. Like if you are able to share a space with queer people and even go to like maybe like workshops or like, you know, if there are like support groups and stuff where straight people can also come, like go for those things. Be open, have conversations, be understanding, share what are your concerns as well, so queer people can hear you out as well, and we can eventually like come to a common understanding.